Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special stream. I am, of course, rolling solo because, if you can believe it, my co-pilot, Zach, is in Jersey for the Pro Tour for Flesh and Blood. And I thought it was a perfect time to actually chat with Simon Swan, who's the marketing director of Sorcery TCG, about the game. About where things have gone, about the Kickstarter, the success there. We haven't got a chance to actually publicly talk to Simon or anybody from that company since that happened. And so we're gonna dive in. We're gonna interview Simon. I've got him here on my laptop. We've got a special little Zoom template planned. I think it's gonna work out just nice. And if anybody has any questions in the chat while this is going on, that's where I'm gonna be looking for questions to ask Simon. We're just going to have a nice conversation and see how this goes. So if you guys have any questions about Sorcery or the development therein, please do leave those in the chat. And I am now going to join Simon here, and we'll see if our special system has worked. So check this out. Let's go. Boom. Boom. Simon, let me get my headphones.
Okay.
You can unmute yourself. And I believe we're here. Awesome. All right, how are you doing, Simon?
I'm fine. I'm doing really well. So it's a real buzz, to be honest. I've watched this show many, many times over the last few years, and always been a big fan. Watched all the different games that you've covered, and I thought to myself, oh, wow, these guys have really got it going on. It's really cool to see you actually interact with the community the way that you do. So even being asked to do this is a privilege. So thank you very much for asking me to be on the show. I really appreciate it.
Well, that's amazing, man. Thank you so much for saying so. Let's start off with the basics. $4 million Kickstarter. What happens in the Sorcery atmosphere whenever that goal is reached?
It's hard to put into words. It's a once in a lifetime experience, I think. Obviously, at the scale that the project was, and a lot of Erik's hard work had led up to this over the previous 3 years. But when you go to customers and you present what the vision is and say, hey, believe us, we want to do this cool thing, and we want everybody to stake money on the future success of this project to build our credibility, you don't know what's going to happen. And increasingly, more and more card games have gone to Kickstarter, and it seems to be a successful model, at least to get them started. So when things first started, it was myself and Erik. We thought, it's going to be okay to start with. And the initial acceleration just blew our hair back. You have to be somewhat dynamic during these campaigns. You have things like stretch goals, which you need to implement. And you kind of have it all planned out. We had a spreadsheet with all of the figures in, and we thought to ourselves, okay, this is probably going to land here, and this is when we want to do this. We had some which were time sensitive, involving partners and different types of reveals that we had to do at certain times, and all that went out the window very quickly. So basically, what you have to do is try and figure out how you can be extremely transparent with folks. It's very, very important when doing this type of stuff. It's a system of belief, the Kickstarter, that, hey, we're going to, you guys are doing the right thing here, but we want the product. So during I think it was 3 weeks, I'm glad we didn't do 4. I'm glad it was 3 weeks, because 3 weeks was pretty exhausting, But right at the end, we had a live stream where we're basically doing the countdown. And we kind of come to terms of where we're going to be. And then we saw the number accelerate and kind of got behind it a little bit and said, okay, let's get to a big round number here. But it's meaningless, really, because it's in New Zealand dollars and stuff like that. But what I will say is that this has given me a real appreciation for all of the hard work that any creator does in this space. It's extremely challenging. It's mentally, it's a strain to do this, to be responsive all the time. But we've been supported so well by our community that it's actually made it a real delight and very easy to be successful. And that's critical, really. We wouldn't be able to do this without the people that believed in us.
Yeah, so at this point, you have a lot of people that do believe in you. And I'm wondering, now that you've interacted with that audience a lot more over time, like, what is it about Sorcery that people seem to be so ready to back, to commit to, they're so excited about?
That's a multifaceted question, because it'd be a lot of those. I think it's fair to say that different people see different things in the game. Whenever you have a project like this, we focus on the notion of a persona, how people interact with a certain product. And it's very similar to the way that you run your business as well. You know, you have a collector persona, you have a player persona, you have people who are re-entering a hobby, people who are new to it, people who are pulling along their families into the hobby. We have an investor persona. All these different people make up our sort of a map. These are the guide points that we have to address to be successful within the industry. So with that in mind, I think that a lot of people, first of all, saw a lot of the hard work that Erik had done to uniquely position a game which basically calls back to vintage sensibilities. It's very much a boutique type of project where the art is front and center. We've worked very carefully with our artists to make sure that their vision is represented within the game pieces and the cards. So people, when they actually look at the cards, they have a full appreciation of absolutely everything that's there. That's why they're full, sort of full art cards. People were instantly drawn to that. The names that we worked with, the people that Erik had approached and collaborated with us on the project, I'm sure had a huge impact on that. We then go to gameplay. The game itself is one of those games that kind of scratches a little bit of an itch. You know, you kind of play it and you think, okay, I like the way this is, because for me, and this is probably my opinion, I'm not very good at the game, by the way. You know, I try my hardest, but I've never had the mental capacity to be sort of highly functional in these types of games. But to have something which represents the world or the realm, something which you physically interact with, which is positioning, it's very reminiscent of video games, the way that you're actually creating that world. I remember there's a game called Populous, an Amiga game, which was 30 years ago, showing my age a little bit. And myself and Erik are, geeks like that. But those types of games where you're world building, but also interacting with it as well. It's like a territory control game where you interact with that, but you could also be your downfall to a degree as well. I think that game, interacting that way, is fundamental. Now, a lot of people talk about being competitive or how you would interact with that. And what we see is that I think what I really want people to enjoy is the story aspect of it. And I don't want to move away from people actually wanting to play this at a competitive level. That's for sure. It's fundamental, because people will always do that with games. You know, we have people who were into, I mentioned before, and someone criticized me, competitive eating. Whatever it is, somebody would go out there and just say, hey, I'm bigger, faster, I can do this better than somebody else and prove their worth. But when we get down to a game like this, it just feels cool. It has the space that when you interact with it just feels nice. It's not a high pressure game. The only pressure is for you to make the best decision rather than to be more concerned about what your opponent's doing. And like I said, that's a different part of the brain that you use when compared to a lot of other games. And I don't want to generalize too much, but that fundamentally is how the game's been built. Nick and Erik did some fantastic work at the start, just creating this whole notion of the macro, the world, and how things interact with it. And then they brought in the avatar as the point of control. This is your representation within the game state. This is how you would function within the world as the creator, as the individual being, which actually then dynamically enforces the elements around the board state to create this game, this competitive environment. That fundamentally is what it is. But I think, to summarize, everybody gets something a little bit different from the game, and that's what ultimately makes a project exciting.
You've got some real populist support in the chat right now on Restream. Auxerador saying populist with a lot of exclamation points, and Chris Malver, populist was fantastic. So with that said, I think the natural thing that happens, like in our Discord, it's kind of hard to talk about Sorcery in the sense of like, what is it about the balance or the design of the game that makes it more thematic, that isn't just it being less balanced than other games? right? Like
Okay.
the common refrain is like, oh, well, they're just not going to spend as much time on card balance. And so some things will be way better than others. And is that really what we're talking about here? So how do you sum up this thematic push that isn't just, well, some cards are going to be way better than others?
Yeah, that's a very a point well made. And I think fundamentally, the answer is, well, we actually do a lot of that work. As of right now, we're doing what we call like the Kickstarter pass. We're going through every single card and figuring out why it exists, what function, what purpose does it has, how does it interact with other cards. We've completed that process for, I think, the 4 elements. We're currently working on the relics. But we are going to that degree of, in terms of templating, consistency, how they interact with the rules, ease of use, that type of stuff. So that's something we do take seriously. Now, if you look at the design of any card game, it's part skill, part randomization. It's inevitable. We've all said, oh, I got an unlucky draw with a card game. That happens all the time.
It's always a beautiful scapegoat.
Exactly. That's my go-to for sure. But basically, when I look at something like that, what I'm thinking to myself is, okay, there's a balancing act that we have here. Now, when we go to Sorcery and look at that, then what we would like to do is implement things which are thematic, which are event-based into the game. And that means that they will be more dynamic. That means that they will be more on the outside of that. If you look at the way that the cards have been created, thematically through the art, to the text, which is extremely flavorful, all the way through to how the cards function. If you look at a card in Sorcery, first of all, it's visually distinctive. But secondly, you can kind of imagine how it would work within the board state as well. You look at it and think, okay, that probably would do that. And sometimes there's some lovely surprises as well. Now, wrapping all that into a game, into an experience, means that, yes, at certain circumstances, there will be things which potentially might be powerful, but these should be costed effectively. There should be the right element of randomization to make sure that these aren't things that you can consistently rely upon. And one of the features we have in the game is our rarity scale of having 4 different rarities, all the way down from unique cards through to ordinary cards. That allows us to control the number of those cards which appears in your deck, is a counter against consistency. So even though there will be some very powerful cards in there, you have to be a bit careful. Do you want to play towards consistency, or do you want these really big hitters to pop up? Also, you have to balance the fact that you have to fund these through the elements themselves, but also some have elemental thresholds, which makes sure that they can't be played effectively in certain decks as well. So it's very much a multifaceted. We've got some very intelligent people who work on this and talk about these questions, and we've got a fantastic set of play testers who give us a lot of this type of feedback. And I'm not a subject matter expert here. I'm just relaying what I've heard. So hopefully that gives people a feel for what happens behind the scenes a little bit.
Yeah, that's an excellent relay. It kind of goes in here to Gerardimus Prime here says, how much longer do you plan on taking playtesting data before finalizing the game? I've seen some comments about that, like, wow, it's kind of, by the way, it's not weird, but people have said, they're still debating like fundamental things about the system. When is all that going to be finalized and tightened up?
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll take as much time as we can possibly get to make sure that we can iterate. One thing which is important is that we need to listen to the feedback that people give us. When you interview people who have worked with video games, they do their best, and then it gets out there. They give it to their customers. What happens? Things that it's instantly broken. Things that, in the real world, I'm going to do this, and it's things which fall outside the scope and realm of testing. And testing is a function of time and expertise. The people who actually use the assets the correct way. So we're going to take as long as we possibly can. Now, it would be very easy for us to say the game in its current state is fully formed, or we can get it out there. And that would be good enough. People play it today. That's fantastic. But we want to do more. We want to evolve what we have. We want to listen to the community and basically get that feedback back into the game in the most sort of cohesive way possible to overall improve the performance. Yes, when people say a card is, the things I look out for is that wasn't fun. Mm-hmm. That for me is a big problem. The fun aspect of that's what concerns me. If something's powerful, that's good, but there needs to be an impact, there needs to be some kind of balancing weights and measures against that as well. So, yep, we reserve the right to do as much as we possibly can to make the game excellent. And if that means that we are taking some more, how can I put this? Deeper dives into certain areas and aspects, I think that's absolutely okay as well. But you also have to bear in mind the game has been in existence for 2 to 3 years. So right now, there's a lot of the heavy lifting has already been done.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Curiosity on my end on the playing side, the gameplay side, which of course it's kind of funny that I'm talking about this element of the game because obviously gameplay is super important, but one of the defining things about Sorcery is that it's kind of breaking a lot of molds for what I would expect for a game to do. And so like the immersion in the game when you're playing it is so strong that like whether or not this card has a 2 or a 1 on it actually seems to be less relevant than it would be in other games like Flesh and Blood, which is trying to be a competitive card game. And so on that note, this idea that there's kind of a delineation between a hyper-competitive Pro Tour, like Zach's at the Pro Tour right now for Flesh and Blood, there's this hyper-competitive Pro Tour put on by the organization, by Legend Story Studios, your friends there in New Zealand. What is it? How are you going to position as a publisher Sorcery through your use of organized play, if at all? Because I could see this going both ways. When people ask me about this, I say, well, Sorcery feels like a game that could have no organized play at all, and say, hey, players, you used to figure out how to have fun with the game by yourselves. You don't need us to do it for you. Right. But I could also see you taking a really new or a novel approach to organized play. So where are you guys landing on how you might sort this out?
Yeah, it's a good question. Let's talk about breaking the model a little bit. I think that's important. There's been many different projects recently with the resurgence of trading card games. And Kickstarter has been a very effective medium in reaching people. One thing we don't have is the data. How did these perform? They're all too close together. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. And so the one thing we can do is to follow our vision as to what we want to do. Now, we're quite privileged in the way that this project initially was very much self-funded by Erik. And basically, it represented exactly what he wanted from a card game. Our aim is to align other people with that vision so they can enjoy it too. And through doing so, we make decisions which are typically not sort of atypical for the industry. One thing which people would expect for a project like this is, well, you know, I don't want to be, it's not a treadmill of content. You know, we don't want people to actually have to engage every 3 months and completely change the way they play the game. One thing that we do as a result of Kickstarter is we get a tremendous amount of data. We understand who our players are, how they've interacted with card games in the past. We read through all of the comments. And we're seeing a space in the industry to allow us to coexist with a lot of these other games, for sure. The one area that I look to, which gives me confidence that this is the right decision for us, is how people interact with Magic the Gathering. Commander is a hugely popular format, which was initially built out by players with a sort of product support by Wizards of the Coast over time. Now, for me, at the scale that I'm seeing, the people I interact with and the stores which I sort of visit, a lot of people play that as their main game. And I think that's fantastic. I think that really gets people around the table having fun, interacting with the product on their terms. Now, I'm not a big advocate of saying, okay, guys, here's all your stuff, have fun, over to you. Because when I've interacted with these things before, I kind of like official stuff. I like things which have been blessed by the publisher, that they've actually said, yeah, we're going to go ahead and do this. It creates excitement. So I think it's an area of measurement. We're going to see what the response is and be proportionate with how we actually produce and provide sort of content for exactly that. Now, some people call it like sort of competitive prizes or something like that. I'm sure there's other ways that we can do that. And our aim is to figure out what works for our brand to reward people for having social interactions within different stores. One thing that yourself and Zach have spoken about before is the nature of the game store. the continuously sort of continual evolution of how people interact with those. You know, a lot of stores that I know, again, charge for play space. Come and play the game. There's a table fee. You can do what you want. That's fantastic. Does that model scale? Do people really want that? Do people want to get product really quickly from Amazon? How do they want to do this type of stuff? So we have to be very careful. I love the model of Team Covenant, which I see as a hybrid model. Obviously with the physical and the ability to acquire product through your subscription services. I think that's really strong. I think people really like that as well and enjoy it. And we're just listening to a whole bunch of people. A lot of the discussions we're having are with industry people who in equal measure want to acquire the product for their customers, but also to advise us as well. So it's a great process, and we're certainly learning a lot. But fundamentally, I don't want people to play the game socially and not have anything to back them up, I think it's fair to say. We've talked about it a lot internally.
Yeah, totally reasonable. It's funny you mentioned the local store, because we actually, Wednesday is our training day for the inevitable launch of 3.0, which will have some amount of cocktails. So I actually got brought one just now because that is my job as the marketing manager, to make sure that our products are as good as they can be. So unfortunately on Wednesdays I have to have a drink every now and again. But
it's to be done, it's all part of the training.
Another example of where you can change the paradigm on these things. Is there any information? Well, I'll ask you this before I get into the weeds on Kickstarter.
Yep.
How has your experience been with the local retail environment? Like, what have those interactions been like? Have they been surprising or predictable?
Depends on your point of view. I would say that's they've been, for me, it's surprising. I can tell you right now that going to market with a Kickstarter isn't in the best interests of local game stores. I think we all appreciate that. And what we did is we offered an innkeeper pledge, which is a way of allowing stores to participate. But it wasn't the answer. This wasn't the best way that we could get product to them. It wasn't cost effective, wasn't scalable. It takes way too long when you're interacting with stores. They don't want to have money tied up for a long period of time before they can actually deliver to customers and subsequently complete that transaction. A lot of stores are hand to mouth in that regard. So it's very challenging for us to support that. Now, what we are seeing, however, is that stores are contacting us saying, I really want to do something with your product, but we feel that this is very much always going to be customer driven. Again, from a Kickstarter background, I don't want to compare us to other projects, but in terms of being a breakout project, this is the next big step for us to take. How do we have a sort of one-to-one relationship with these stores so they feel that they're gaining value? There's a reason for their customers to interact with their business, and there's a reason for them to purchase products and feel that they're part of a community. This is what we need to build, and that's an endeavor. This is something you hire into to basically get that set of skills and that expertise, just so that you can actually function in this area. Also, you have to be ready to change. Things can, there's market pressures. There's a whole variety of different things as well going on with trading card games. We're in the middle of what we consider a boom right now. What will happen in a year? What will happen with 2 game stores when potentially people really get back into things after the pandemic? We don't have those answers. But fundamentally, I think that I think that we do want to be able to have a place with stores for sure. To have both the main product and potentially products which are ideally tuned for their retail model. The products that we had for Kickstarter probably aren't perfect for retail in terms of pricing and the way that people get into the game. I think we can do better. And when we have those conversations, we will.
That's fantastic. Winning agenda here on the chat said on the organized play front. Love to hear that, Simon. The People's Champion prizes for Flesh and Blood is a good example of rewarding positive social interaction and people who engage in having spaces positively but may not be winners. So there's definitely there's an energy around organized play. I've felt it in the last couple of years, especially, that there's changes kind of floating around here. And I think you guys might find yourself on the kind of the leading edge of a different approach to organized play. And I'm really excited to see where you guys land on that. On that note, like what is the landscape for games and tabletop and where you are in trading card games? What's the atmosphere right now, and how has it changed as compared to whenever Erik kind of first was envisioning this product many years ago? Have the tides shifted positively for you? Are there things now that are more concerning than they were then? Like, what do you see as the next few years and kind of where have things come?
It ebbs and flows for sure. 3 years ago was a long time ago, probably pre-boom. I think that there was probably activity around Flesh and Blood at that time for sure. MetaZoo, I don't think, maybe had been a Kickstarter initially. I don't quite know the timeline there, but we look at a bunch of other card games and they just didn't exist. It was Magic the Gathering. It was limited card games. I know you're a big aficionado of those, as am I. I love playing those types of things, such as Arkham Horror and things like that. But fundamentally, what I want people to understand is that this is not necessarily risky for us at all. It is a passion project. It is something that we want to do. And the success is the fact that we've done it. And that's fundamentally what it is. It's the way that Eric's works is that the business impact is almost secondary to a degree. If we do the cool stuff we want to do and people believe in it and have fun, and we can basically cover the costs and we can sell at scale and we can start growing the interest in the business, that's fantastic for us. We don't have these commercial pressures of set 3 needs to land this particular time and it needs to do this for the product, or it needs to have some kind of crossover or some external market pressure. We don't have to do that. So it doesn't really concern me. But I think that the notion of collectability is basically on steroids at the moment, for sure. People like to have the cool, the exclusive stuff. I think that's going to wane. I see that already we've seen sort of market movement on high-end collectibles, and I think that's going to continue to be the thing as people offload due to recession pressure and things like that. It's inevitable. But I do think that people fundamentally do want to own the cool stuff. And what we need to do is we need to have enough stuff which is collectible. We need to have enough stuff that people treasure. I read an article yesterday about how you pitch sort of a high-end collectability. There's a industry term for it. I can't remember what it was now. It begins with V. I'll look it up. I'll put it in the notes or the comments.
Right on.
But people, you have to build towards that. But that's not something you can do in isolation. There has to be a contract that you have with your customers of trust that, we'll be very transparent. To give you an example, when we went to Kickstarter, we basically said we won't be printing any other boxes after the Kickstarter. And that's something which we're very committed to. We got the final numbers from Kickstarter, and I don't think we shared this, but we've basically agreed that the alpha print is going to be 29,000 boxes. Now, the reason for that is that it covers our commitment to our backers, but also gives us the ability to have products available for replacement if there's any issue with the product, and also to work with partners, for vendors, etc., not through a secondary market activity, but through direct product support for them. That for us is fantastic. That basically solves every single problem. We've been very declarative as to what the collectability is, and then we can start moving into the revised set and then the second edition and all these different cool things that we've got planned. But fundamentally, that's the way that we're going about this.
I know you might not be able to talk too much about it, but Kobold TS has a question for you. And before I get there, I see Collector Art House here in the chat. Simon, I assume you're aware of the Collector Art House website. That thing is incredible. A lot of the stuff that we're running behind the shot right now is from the Collector Art House screens. So thank you, Collector Art House, for making that available. That is an incredible site for this game. If anyone hasn't seen it, go check it out. And Kobold's question here is, I'm sure the focus is on releasing the first release, clearly, but is there anything you can share about the future of the game, ideas for expansions? I would say the question that we get the most for our subscription is the second set a different version of the first set, or is there a new second set, and is the first set ever going to be available except through Kickstarter? What are the plans around that? And then there was a question a little bit lower here, I'll try to find your name, that was asking about pre-constructed decks. Joshua Levitt here. For the more casual players, can we expect prefabricated sorcery decks for each new set release? So I know, details are hard right now, and you probably don't want to commit to anything, but is there kind of an idea of what you're thinking?
Yes. So let's take the second question first, because I can remember that one. Basically, in terms of the pre-constructed decks, we have the 4 element decks at the moment. This is an area that we can devote additional resource. I see your deck as, or spellbook, or the combination of your Atlas cards and your spells as being a story, as being something which you're constructing. And I think that we can do a very good job from our immense card pool of 400 cards to help create some experiences which people might not have done. Obviously, people can collect the cards at scale and form their own decks, but kind of seeding this in terms of, hey, try this combination, see what you think. That's the kind of things that we can do. And that's the kind of product which I've got in mind for retail. Now, this may potentially, and this is something we've talked at a very high level with Erik. This is not declarative in our approach, but maybe some kind of seasonal product which could incorporate that kind of feel into it for sure. So I think that's probably how we'd look at the pre-constructed. A lot of other products have a whole variety of different pre-constructed decks, and fundamentally they have the synergy. They work really well. There's kind of a payoff. You play it, and then basically it kind of has a crescendo. I'm going to get to this point, and then I've got my one of three cool outcomes for the cards that I'm going to play, which is going to be defining in the game. Again, that's very sorcery-ish. That's cool. We like that kind of thing. So that's kind of area we're going to go in. Now, you have to forgive me. You have so I will mention Collector Art House. Mike does a fantastic job. He's been he's done absolutely so many interviews, and I can't say enough good things about the contributions of Mike. He's really been a tremendous area of support, and we've been really blessed by content creators, by partners who've been extremely supportive to the project. So a big thank you to everybody, in addition to all our artists and all the staff. Could you just go through that first question again, just so I can recap on that? Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, isn't it amazing when you put something out there that you just genuinely believe in, you want to bring to reality, and then you find that there's so many people out there that are just willing to help you along the way and support you in that effort. It's always just amazing, to see what the community kind of comes up with, and Collector Art House is a great example of that. So my question is, there's some confusion about like the Kickstarter of the first set, and then there's a revised maybe first set, and then there's a second set that is presumably available not just through Kickstarter, if through Kickstarter at all. Can you just tell us a little bit about thinking about release plans and kind of how these sets are going to roll out?
Yes. Our core focus right now is the Kickstarter set, and this is something which we're fully focused on. So basically, we're working towards how we can actually get that through production into people's hands. Following that, we're going to have a revised set of the alpha or Kickstarter set. Basically, this is, I wouldn't say it's an at-scale print, but potentially we have to address a wider market. And it's going to be that same set with a few key differences. We talk about this, but we have our mysterious curio cards. Potentially, we may see some activity there, maybe, to add another element of collectability. But fundamentally, as I mentioned, getting a game out there and seeing how people interact with it, we want to take that feedback and make these slight tweaks. This is not going to be a ground-up reinvention of the game by any means. It will be things like wording clarification. We'll look for the most egregious interactions and maybe work through those as well. That's the kind of thing we want to do. So that's going to be the revised edition, and currently our plan is to do that at some point early next year. Again, we don't have a solid timeline for that because we have to get the Kickstarter into people's hands reliably and then have a period of time. So basically we can start ramping up our retail partners into that. Following that, we have what we call our next set or second set. The more I say on this, the more that it gets quoted. But we do have, so we are already into the process of creating the content and the structure around that set. Our aim is to have that around mid next year. Okay, so that's potentially when we want to get it into people's hands. I'm unwilling to share any more details of that because, like I said, it's a spiral, and people know me in spoilers. I try not to overshare because I like the element of surprise, and I really want people to feel it at the right time. And so that's the plan right now. I know Erik's worked with a lot of the artists already. We have some really cool ideas. What I can share is that moving into that set, we want to maybe evolve the game slightly as well. As you're aware, there are 4 different elements. We haven't done a very good job at potentially combining those elements. Maybe that's an area that we want to start getting into with this next set. We're looking at the interaction of the avatars, how they function within the game itself. Is there mileage to do more of those, to evolve those, maybe, to do more exciting things? The answer is yes. And would we like to do that? Maybe. Let's see what happens. Fundamentally, we've got the mechanic of Death's Door. What does that really mean? Does it mean that you just get one extra go? Or could something else happen there in the future? That's the kind of areas that we're looking at for this set. And like I said, I'm not being declarative in terms of we're absolutely doing this, because it's not timely. But I just basically want to give people a feel for what are my sort of mental processes through this, and potentially the kind of areas we'd like to move into in the future.
Yeah, that makes total sense. A quick question from Dieter here. Are you full-time on Sorcery now?
Yeah, I'm not willing to answer that specific question. Basically, I work alongside Erik on this. I do have other roles as well, but
Cool.
Erik's backed up by other people on the team, and we have, I think, 3 or 4 other full-time employees on the thing. But this is something we're hiring into. My set of skills and expertise was to allow us to deliver on the Kickstarter, first of all, to assemble a community, and then to basically pull other people into the business in strategically the right areas to help us address the scaling issues that small businesses have. So that potentially is my level of involvement.
I think the reality is you just have a lot of fans out here on the internet, and we're just hopeful that you're as involved as you can be.
Well, I'd like to be. I've basically. So I want to talk a little bit about how I got involved in this, because this is important. It's people probably say, well, I really want to do something cool like this as well. And I thought that for a long time. How can I be involved with this? And fundamentally what I did is, when the project came out, maybe middle of last year, maybe start of last year, I contacted Erik and said, hey, I really like what you're doing. How can I help? And he was like, well, not sure you can. I said, well, try me, what kind of things do you want to talk about? And we got into discussions, and this was a long process. You really had to get to know each other. I was fortunate because I'd worked in content creation before. And so we're able to help him with some things like that. But it became a very organic process. And so the one thing I would encourage anybody to do is at all creative or working in this area, or where they would like to, just get started. Just start doing something. Start your own card game. Start, developing. It's not about the product. It's developing the skills. It's developing how you are as a person, how you interact, who you know. That's the kind of thing you want to do. And I can guarantee there's probably 2 or 3 people out here today who would be surprised themselves with what they're able to produce. So that's my sort of special tip for folks if they're looking to do things like this, is just start doing it, and you're going to find your feet really quickly.
Yeah, what a wonderful tip. Thank you for sharing that. Quick aside here, because this is just such a nice thing in the chat here. Robbie Valdez said, we demoed the game out here in Louisville a couple of weeks ago after backing the Kickstarter. I was blown away with the classic fun that I felt from playing and the beautiful flavor that's in this game. That comment is followed up by King of Odonata. Yep, I'm one of the Louisville organizers who put together that print and play. We had way more fun than we should have, even with some fiddly rules and abilities. It was just so engaging. And we talked about this a little bit up front, but I'm going to go to the Discord and grab my remaining questions. Before I do, that sentiment of classic fun is something that I have had the hardest time defining and really putting my finger on in a way that really fulfills what I'm looking for. When you know it too, it's classic fun. There's something about this game. It's classic fun. What do you point to as like the succinct selling point for why Sorcery is such a classically fun game?
I avoid selling points because that's not really what it's about. I don't want to change the question, but
points that happen to sell the game.
Exactly. Yeah. This is not some kind of trial. I'm not trying to avoid the question, but so again, this is not us being focused on the commercial outcome here. This is us being focused on the game itself. I like to think with Sorcery, it's a feeling it's a greenfield feeling, first of all. That when you approach this, you've basically got the different aspects that you can visualize, you can see. But when you play it, you're learning as you go. It's very important to us that when you have that first game, there has to be meaningful interaction. You can read the cards, you can read the rules, you can play through it. You may play a few things wrong. That's fine. Guess what? Still had fun. You still saw the big thematic goblins come and beat you up, or there was an earthquake which shifted all the sites around. That's really what it's all about. I think that a disassociation with I wouldn't call it internet culture, but in terms of being kind of almost reductive in terms of iterating through the game to get the most efficient outcome is something we're keen to avoid as well. But fundamentally, I think it really comes from maybe the lack of story I think that's a differentiator. I don't know many people who say, hey, you know what, I want a card game, but I really want to have another really cool story. It's kind of organic. It happens. A lot of them are linked to existing properties. But to have that feeling of adventure, that you're responsible for creating the story, to your point about the gaming group, which had fun doing it, that's really what we want. We want to have a memorable moment. People who will always look back to that and say, do you remember that time we tried Sorcery? That was fun. That's really what we want to try and achieve. If anything, that is the selling point, is the fact that people remember the interactions they have with the game, and they can build on that and bring more people in and share that fun with others.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. This idea that the imagination is yours, and it's, kind of taking place on this game board, and you're telling a unique story every time, is something that does get lost in a lot of the more granular TCGs, where you have very definite characters doing very definite things, and you're kind of like an audience member as much as you're a participant. And in Sorcery, it certainly feels more like you are the director and the actor. It's almost like, role-playing does this too, where you're so engaged in making the story that it's both about you and because of you. And Sorcery does a really, really good job of that. Loose Leaf Tea over here on our Discord has a number of questions for you. I'm going to cover them in a different order than they were posted, but this would be a fun thing to get your perspective on. Do you have a favorite mechanic in Sorcery?
Yes. I like interacting with the void. The ethereal elements, which can sort of transcend space and time and move between different things. I think for me, that's a really cool area that potentially we could expand on as well. But it's always kind of like that edgy thematic kind of like undead spirit realm kind of stuff. And I'm a big fan of that. So I enjoy that. But there are many different areas. I like the way that a lot of the sites have fundamental value in themselves in terms of interacting with the game board. You can do things like, for instance, Mountain Pass. It might seem like a very a very inconsequential card, but putting that at the right place at the right time, and suddenly you have an advantage with your wind minions. That's killer. That's a really cool type of interaction. So it's really the sum of the parts. But I look at the game itself. I like the wind element for sure, but I also do like the whole void aspect of it as well. For me, that's kind of fun.
Yeah, there was somebody who was asking what your favorite element was, so we can assume that wind is correct.
Earth as well. Earth is pretty cool. A lot of people are fire initiados, and I've seen the pure destructive power of that. But I've also seen maybe some other cards that people haven't. So I've reserved the right to basically have slightly different favorites from other people.
Totally makes sense. Yeah, how tantalizing. What about your favorite mechanic in a different game that you played in the past, and that's not Sorcery?
Good question. I would say I was really surprised by the Marvel TCG.
Champions?
Yeah. I got it. And it's one of those things you think, look, I'm not going to buy this because it's not my thing. I'm not a huge superhero fan. I like Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and stuff like that. But superheroes for me were not really part of my... There were comics around, but I wasn't a big fan of superheroes. But I got it anyway because I heard other stuff. And I thought, this is going to be like a dumbed-down version of... like the Lord of the Rings game, which I've got a lot of, or Arkham Horror. And I got it. And I was really knocked out by the way that your heroes and alter egos react with the board itself, and basically change the whole game state. That there was a mechanic where you could flip between them, and suddenly you could actually have a different interaction with the game. That for me was super cool. I like the notion of deck building. Somebody asked, well, why is this a TCG? Fundamentally, it's because that's what people want, and it's proven to be very successful for us, and also allows us to lean into the collectability aspect of that. But when I'm looking at very specific mechanics, I go as far as I'm a big fan of tabletop miniature games as well. And there's one game which is a Song of Ice and Fire, which is by Simon Games.
Yeah.
I've run a community for that for many years. And that was great because you had what was on the board. You had the units, which you could move around and interact. It was like trays that you moved around. And that was a lot of fun. But also they had the political aspect of it. They had the tactics board where you could interact as Cersei or Tyrion, and you could actually influence the game state using these political political characters who could help you bring additional abilities into the game or disrupt the game. For me, that was almost visionary in the tabletop gaming space. So Michael Chanel and Fabio Curry, who actually work on that game, have done some fantastic work in really building that out. I'd encourage people, if they are card game people, to consider that and take a look at it. Maybe look at a few videos. But there's so many cool games out there right now. It's very difficult to overlook something and think, I know what this is. You have to sit down and give it some time. And this is why, going back to the question of game stores and what their purpose is, this allows you to have those experiences, to meet people and play new games and try new things. And I think that people overlook that. Buying behavior is very self-selective on the internet these days. A lot of people they do their research and they know what they're going to buy and they'll just action that. As gamers, we need to be a bit more intelligent than that and be a lot more open. And I noticed that people who do that tend to have stronger relationships and more fun in stores. So get out there, go to your gaming store and just see what's going on.
Zach and I were both quite amazed. We gave A Song of Ice and Fire a try on stream, I think it was last year. And I had slept on that game, but it was remarkably good. I was just kind of blown away by it. Question here from Inquisitor Moloko, also known as Jeff here on our Discord.
Weekends, yep.
What do you have any idea about limited play for Sorcery? Sealed deck, draft tournaments, these kinds of things, or just official support for those kinds of formats?
I can't comment on official support because that's really outside of my realm of responsibility, but it is something we have discussed internally for sure. There has been streams where we have provided people with digital assets, which basically allowed them to replicate that. And we've been looking at those results as well as from our internal testing. We don't really have anything to announce right now, but we're very conscious that is one of the core paths that people interact with a product like this. People like to do that type of thing. So let us see what we can do to either deliver on that or maybe reimagine it in a different way. Like I said, I don't quite know what the plans are. I haven't got that deep with it. I can't do everything for the business, but I think it's certainly things we've spoken about for sure.
Yeah, makes sense. We got a little bit more time here, so I'll dive into something a bit more kind of inside baseball, if you'll allow me. I've not been a part of Kickstarter. I've never done a Kickstarter project. I never produced a trading card game. I never had to print X number of booster boxes, etc. Yep. Question again from Loose Leaf T in our Discord asking, was there anything that was particularly easier or harder throughout this process that was surprising in the way that it took place that you kind of weren't expecting?
It depends on what your expectations are, I think. So in terms of the production side, that is challenging. There's a lot of competitive elements there in terms of it's not just having the relationships with the production partners. It's sourcing the materials, which is incredibly difficult. It's the shipping logistics, which is challenging. The biggest issue and the thing I feel most is communicating with our backers and to fulfill our obligations. That's the biggest weight that I feel. And it's more than I thought it would be. I thought, we just do this and we'll get it to them. It's going to be fine. Mm-hmm. No, we really care about what we do here. This is very important to us and we want everyone to have a fantastic experience. So that's something which you don't realize until you're doing it. I found it tremendously easy to make friends and have a great time doing this. I thought it is way more fun than I thought it was going to be. It's one of these things you think, okay, this is going to be a lot of work, but it doesn't really feel like work at all. So that was cool. But I think that it's really once we get into commercial agreements and responsibilities to distribution partners, that's been challenging. And a lot of other card games. When we look at some of the sort of more recent activity around card games and how people interact with them, stock availability, that's a concern for us as well. We need to tread that line. Now, we kind of skirt it a little bit because of our release schedule. It's not something where we're committing to doing something every 3 months. So for us, we have a little bit more leeway for sure. But again, it's something we want to make sure that when we're ready, we can have a consistent message. The product's available to people and they can go into stores and interact with it. That's something which is a future problem, but something which I feel might be something I really want to care about as well.
Right on. Well, we've covered about all the ground that I had for you. I've got one more question, and then I'm looking in the chat here too. If anybody watching, if you guys have any additional questions, I'll try to follow it up here at the very end. But I'm going to throw this kind of to you, Simon, because there's a suggested question that we have from the Discord as well, which is for me to ask you. is if there was one question you wanted me to ask that I didn't, is there anything in that realm that you would like to answer or otherwise get information out about to the fans out here?
No, I hate answering questions. No, no, not really. I think that we have to bear in mind that this sort of the Q&A this thing is a continual process for us, interacting on Discord and through social channels. We try our best to interact with folks, and so there's very little that we haven't heard already. I think that one thing that I would like to mention is obviously our relationship that we have with Team Covenant. And how we are looking to support that, both with product and obviously the exclusive card that we want to work with you on. I know that you had some certainly had some ideas as to potentially what direction you want to go in, and we want to make sure we deliver on that as well. So that's one cool thing we'll be discussing hopefully in the near future. We have a production pipeline, and we want to make some plans and get you folks excited. So that's one area we've been working.
So in effect, I'll just put some words in Simon's mouth here. He's saying everyone should go sign up for a subscription for the Sorcery TCG on teamcovenant.com, so you can get an incredible promo card in starting with set 2. And that is worth noting, anybody watching this. So if you sign up for our subscription on our website, the first set that you'll get, it sounds like, is going to be next year with the official second set. It's not going to serve a revised first set or anything like that. And that'll be the first time we serve product, and it will have an exclusive promo with every booster box that you have in that subscription. And apparently those promos are going to be amazing. One thing I do know is that if the art in every sorcery card is an indicator of the art in a promo sorcery card, I think we will all be very happy with the result of that. Auxerador, of course, asking, will that exclusive card have Steven and Zach's faces on it? I sure hope not. I leave that to the artist.
I'm not sure. As you notice from a lot of the avatars, a lot of them have like shadowy faces and not quite clearly defined. So I don't know. We'll have to think about that. It depends if we'll probably have to pay the artist in danger money for that kind of thing. So we'll have to figure that one out.
All right, Simon. Well, hey, thank you so much for taking the time.
There was one final thing as well. Backer kit. A lot of people want to know what happens next with the Kickstarter. We hope to get Backer kit out there next week. There's a lot of work going into that.
Nice.
The time we take now reduces problems tremendously later down the line. If we get the wrong message out to nearly 7,000 people, we've got a problem. So we're kind of going through things like tax calculations and things like that. So hopefully we do a smoke test next week and people can actually start getting signed up, getting the delivery set for their products, and we'll take care of that process next week. So that's the only other piece of information we have today.
Wonderful. Good info. One more thing, international distribution, Europe, are there things in the works? Do you expect everybody in the world to have access to this product readily?
We'll do the best we can. Yes, we do the best we can. And we've had many conversations with people, not just in North America, on that subject. So we have been contacted by folks. How we actually action that and make that real, we're not sure yet. There's still a lot of conversations to go, but our aim is for this not to be is to be a global game as best we can.
All right, Simon. Well, thank you so much again. I really appreciate you taking the time. And anytime you want to come on and say anything or get any message out that maybe is hard to get out in text, please let us know and we will have you on anytime.
Wonderful. I appreciate your time, Stephen. And I just want to say you guys do a fantastic job. I'm big fans. So this has been a real buzz for me today. Thank you very much.
Awesome, Simon. Thank you so much. I'm going to get out of the call here and go back to the main camera. So I'll see you later, Simon.
Thank you very much.
All right, there you have it. I think I did it. Yeah, everything good? Yeah. Looks good. I think we're here. All right, everybody. Hey, thank you so much for watching. We truly appreciate you being here. We couldn't do any of this stuff without the support of everybody out there. And we mean that genuinely. I mean, Zach and I say that stuff all the time, but like really, it's been 15 plus years now in the making. And every customer, every fan along the way gets us to a point where we actually get the opportunity to do a live broadcast interview with marketing director of Sorcery TCG, which hopefully provides some value and joy to everybody out there. Don't sleep on that subscription. There's certain quantities. We don't have an infinite amount of supply. So like it's free to sign up. You can do that now. You don't have to worry about money going anywhere until 2 to 4 weeks before the set comes out. So like, even if you sign up right now, no money down, $0, no contracts, etc. So you've got essentially an entire year where you can lock in your spot, know that you have it. And then if by the time it's about to charge, it's like, well, it's March. And it's like, I don't want this anymore. You can just bail on it and no harm, no foul. So I would suggest anybody interested, just go ahead and lock your spot in now. It is for set 2, so you don't have to worry about the set 1 Kickstarter kind of dilemma. Okay, so take care, everyone. I will continue to test this Negroni, which is quite nice. And I'll see you guys next time. And if you want to talk sorcery, hop into our Discord. Please do. It's a great place, and we're always happy to have more people engaged there. Take care. We'll see you next time.